In a small fishing village in Ibadan, there was an ancient law that no one was allowed to fish in the forbidden river. The elders said this river was cursed and guarded by a vengeful mermaid who would drag anyone who fished there to the depths, never to be seen again. John was a young fisherman who came from a poor family. He loved fishing more than anything and dreamed of one day having his own boat so he could support his family. But times were hard, and John struggled to catch enough fish in the normal rivers and streams to make ends meet. There has to be an easier way to catch more fish, John thought as he repaired a hole in his net one evening. That's when he remembered the forbidden river that the elders always warned about. John had heard the scary mermaid stories since he was a child, but he didn't really believe them. "Those are just silly folk tales to frighten children," John said out loud with a laugh. "I bet the forbidden river is teeming with fish since no one ever goes there. If I can catch a few buckets full, I could sell them for a small fortune at the market." That night, after his family was asleep, John grabbed his fishing net and basket and crept through the village towards the forbidden river. The moon was full, allowing John to easily find the overgrown path that led to the riverbank. As he approached the water's edge, John felt a strange chill run down his spine. The river seemed to glow with an eerie white light. John shook it off and prepared to cast his net when he heard a beautiful haunting voice singing, "La la la, la la la." John froze, his eyes searching the darkness upriver. That's when he saw her, the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, floating in the middle of the river. She had long, flowing green hair, and her body was sculpted to perfection. But below her waist, she had the powerful tail of a fish, flicking back and forth in the water. "A mermaid!" John gasped in disbelief. The stories were true. The mermaid locked eyes with John and smiled, her sharp teeth glistening. John couldn't help but be drawn to her ethereal beauty and siren song. He took a step towards the river, feeling himself fall into a trance. "No!" John shook his head hard, finally breaking the mermaid's spell. "I can't let you trick me, you river demon!" The mermaid's smile faded as John turned and quickly walked back into the jungle towards the village. As he hurried away, her haunting song echoed all around him, singing, "La, la, la." Once he was far enough away, John let out a deep breath he didn't realize he had been holding. His heart was pounding in his chest. "The elders were right. That mermaid is dangerous," John said, resolving to never return to the forbidden river. But over the next few weeks, John couldn't shake the image of the mermaid's beauty from his mind. Fishing the normal waters never seemed to satisfy him anymore. He tried to stay away, but felt himself being pulled back to the forbidden river against his will. Finally, one moonless night, John's urge to see the mermaid again overpowered his self-control. He grabbed his gear and snuck back to the riverbank, straining his eyes in the darkness. "Mermaid?" John whispered. "Mermaid, are you there?" At first there was silence. Then John heard the familiar haunting song being carried on the wind, singing, "La, la, la." The mermaid slowly rose from the inky water, her green hair and scales seeming to glow. She looked even more breathtaking than John remembered. "You came back to me," the mermaid purred, wading closer until she was just a few feet away. John couldn't speak. He was frozen like a statue, enraptured by the supernatural beauty before him. The mermaid swam even closer, bringing her body right next to John's at the river's edge. She reached out and stroked his face with her delicate webbed hand. "Won't you join me in the river, my love?" she cooed. "The waters are so warm and we can be together always." John blinked hard, regaining a sliver of sense. I shouldn't. The others in my village fear you. You're not natural." The mermaid's eyes flashed with a dangerous glint. "Is that what you think?" Before John could react, the mermaid flicked her powerful tail, drenching John with a blast of river water that swept his feet out from under him. John sputtered and coughed as the mermaid reached out with surprising strength and pulled him into the deep river. Under the water, the mermaid continued dragging the thrashing John behind her with ease. John opened his mouth to scream, but only bubbles escaped his lips. The mermaid seemed to swim even deeper, navigating a series of underwater caverns. Just when John's lungs felt ready to explode, the mermaid pulled him through a narrow tunnel that opened into an enormous air-filled cave. John broke the surface, sucking in huge gulps of oxygen as the mermaid surfaced beside him. "Welcome to my home, my love," the mermaid said, nuzzling her face against John's. "Now you and I can be eternally happy together. All you have to do is accept me as your mate." John looked around at the massive, dimly lit cavern in shock and horror. All along the edges of the cave were human skeletons, the remains of other poor souls who had been taken by the mermaid over the centuries. "I'll never accept you, you monster!" John screamed, recoiling in terror. "Let me out of here!" The mermaid's face contorted with rage. "Fool! You will pay for rejecting me!" With that, the mermaid let out an ear-piercing shriek that echoed off the cavern walls. John clamped his hands over his ears as the mermaid swiped at him with her claws. She raked deep gashes across his chest before grabbed John's arm in a vice-like grip. "You are mine, human!" the mermaid shrieked right in John's face. "I am going to keep you here until your spirit is utterly broken and you worship me like the goddess I am." John tried in vain to pull free from the mermaid's iron grasp. He looked around for anything he could use to fight back, but there was nothing. He could only watch helplessly as the mermaid dragged him towards a dark, underwater tunnel on the other side of the cavern. "Please, have mercy," John begged. "I'm sorry I disrespected you." "Sorry won't save you now," the mermaid snarled. With a final tug, she pulled John through the tunnel and swam down into the abyss. John dared not open his mouth as the unearthly pressure of the deep river crushed his body, the icy water stinging his open wounds. He lost all sense of direction as his world became a spinning vortex of ghostly aqua light. Just when John's final breath was about to escape his lips, the mermaid pulled him through another narrow tunnel that opened into yet another air-filled cavern. This one had a small sandy beach area with torches lining the walls to provide an eerie, flickering glow. The mermaid dragged John onto the beach, his body feeling like a limp rag doll. He gasped and wheezed, coughing up water as the mermaid glared at him. "This will be your new dwelling, human!" the mermaid growled, grabbing a thick chain and using her supernatural strength to wrap it around John's neck like a collar. "You may as well get comfortable because you're never leaving!" With that, the mermaid kicked John hard in the gut. He doubled over, wheezing in agony as she swam away, her taunting laughter echoing across the cavern. For the first few days, John didn't have the strength to move from where the mermaid had left him on the beach. He tried to stay awake at all times, paranoid she would sneak up and do far worse than kick him if she knew he was sleeping. Eventually, hunger overpowered his fear of the mermaid. All around the cavern were bones, crates of various human supplies and artifacts the mermaid must have collected from her victims over the centuries. John managed to scavenge some dried meat and stale bread to satiate his starvation. Days stretched on with no sign of the mermaid. John was certain this would be his tomb, that she had simply left him to die a slow, miserable death on this sandy prison beach. The only way in or out was the underwater tunnels, and John would drown within minutes trying to swim through them. Then, just when John had lost all hope, he heard a familiar haunting song reverberating through the cavern. La la la. The mermaid emerged from the underwater tunnel, dragging a large leather sack behind her onto the beach, her green scales glistening. "Oh good, you're still alive," the mermaid said with a wicked grin, showing off her razor-sharp fangs. "I was beginning to worry I wouldn't have the pleasure of torturing you anymore." John scrambled back in terror as the mermaid tossed the sack at his feet. It landed with a heavy thud, wriggling slightly. John gasped as he heard a muffled scream from inside. What is this?" he asked warily. The mermaid brought her face just inches from John's, never breaking eye contact as she slowly pulled a dagger from her hair and sliced open the bag. A young woman tumbled out, hands and feet bound with thick ropes, a gag stuffed in her mouth and tears streaming down her face. "Oh, don't be rude, my dear," the mermaid crooned, stroking the woman's hair in a mockingly gentle gesture. "This is the newest addition to my collection." The woman let out a muffled scream and struggled against her bindings in vain. "Leave her alone, monster," John cried, balling his fists. "Haven't you done enough evil?" The mermaid turned back to John and cackled. "Evil is my purpose in life. I plan to use this one here as my new plaything. Perhaps you'd like to watch the festivities." She traced the tip of her dagger up the side of the woman's leg, drawing a trickle of blood. The poor woman trembled in absolute horror and squeezed her eyes shut tight. Rage and revulsion boiled up inside John as he watched the atrocity unfold before him. Without thinking, he lunged forward and tackled the mermaid off of her victim, the impact sending the dagger skittering across the cavern floor. The mermaid shrieked in surprise, quickly regaining her bearings. She swiped at John with her claws, but he dodged out of the way, rolling across the beach and making a desperate dive for the dagger. His bound hands grasped the hilt just as the mermaid pounced, driving the blade down at John's face. John swerved just in time, and the mermaid's dagger plunged into the sand just beside his head. With all his strength, he swung the dagger upwards, slicing a deep gash across the mermaid's cheek. The mermaid recoiled, shrieking in pain and clutching her wounded face as John kicked her off of him, sending her tumbling across the sandy beach. He scrambled to his feet and hurried over to the terrified woman, using the dagger to slice through her ropes. "Quick, run! Find somewhere to hide!" John yelled, helping the woman remove her gag. He winced as she screamed in terror as the mermaid rose to her full height, blood dripping from between her clawed fingers, covering her ruined cheek. "You dare strike me!" the mermaid howled, charging towards John in a blinding rage. They collided with a vicious impact, John swinging the dagger to keep the shrieking mermaid at bay as she swiped and scratched with her claws. "I'll flay the flesh right off your body!" the mermaid snarled, frantically trying to grab the dagger away from John. Their teetering battle took them to the edge of the cavern's beach, the dark underwater tunnel gaping just behind them. Then, with one perfectly aimed swipe of her razor-sharp claws, the mermaid sliced across John's wrist,